Alright guys, we got an F-150 that we're putting a leveling kit on, and it's the 2-inch leveling kit. This one's by Rough Country, but there's a few people that make this style. The owner of this truck bought this particular kit. This particular kit actually came with a spacer kit also for the rear. We're not going to put that in. He just wants this truck leveled out using these. This is going to give a 2-inch lift in the front, and that's all he wants. To make this job a lot easier, I'm going to show you some tools you're going to want to have. Otherwise, you're going to be doing a lot of cussing. You're going to want a good pry bar. I've done a review on this pry bar. This is the Quinn. This was a lifesaver on this particular job. You're also going to want a nice socket set. I'll put links to both these items. This is my favorite socket set. Almost every job I do, I get this out. It's got all my sockets there. You're also going to want a large pair of either vice grips, channel locks, something to be able to rotate that bottom strut mount, and I'll show you that whenever we get to it. And then the various other tools that you see there, along with a nice little impact. Now, you don't have to have an impact. An impact to me is like my right hand. I've got to have an impact. That little Nano, I've done a review on it too. That's a beautiful little tool right there. But basically what you got here, so this spacer is going to go up here in the top of the strut, and you've got to tear apart quite a bit of this to be able to get that factory strut in and out. So we're going to take the axle nut off, we'll take this caliper off, we'll hang it over there, we'll disconnect the lines from the knuckle. You're going to disconnect the upper ball joint and the tie rod end, and that way that's going to allow, now a lot of people will disconnect the sway bar from this point. The problem with these Fords is this whole thing will turn. You're not going to be able to get that off without having to back it up, hold on to it. These are two little ball joints right here, and they're going to want to turn. It's a lot easier to just loosen off the sway bar mount, bushing mount bracket, and that'll allow this to drop down plenty far enough to be able to do what we're going to do here. Of course, we're going to take the 3 top bolts, nuts off up here too. Some models have just a single bolt goes through right here. If your model has that, you're lucky, because these bolts right here is what makes, one of the things that makes this a very difficult, not a very difficult job, but it adds a lot of frustration to it, and you'll see why whenever I get to that point. So with all that said, let me get the camera set up and we're going to get started. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this old dust cap off. A couple different ways you can do it. I like to just grip onto it with some channel locks, and you can do that without messing it up. And you're going to want to take this nut off. .13 millimeter. And then the brake caliper bolts, 13 millimeter for them. Make sure you have your impact in reverse. Now I'm going to go ahead, at this point I'm going to take these bolts out right here. There's 10 millimeter here, 10 millimeter, 5mm, 8mm, I'm sorry, or 5/16. Can't really put you anywhere other than over here, so as long as you know what I'm doing, that's probably all that really counts. Now the one up here in the frame is designed to go into sheet metal. The one down here on the knuckle is a machine bolt designed to go into a machine threaded hole. So you can see they're a little different. This one up top, this one down on the knuckle. Now the 8mm. That's the 8mm for the ABS line. Now this will break all this loose pretty good, but you still want to take you got the ABS line that's held together with these little plastic Christmas tree style fasteners. You want to take that off. I probably should have done that while that was still bolted up. Would have made it easier, but you want to go ahead and pull those out of there. They are reusable, so you'll just push them back in whenever you're done. They just pull out like that. That'll give that ABS line plenty of slack. I'm going to go ahead and go after the sway bar mount. If you've got the splash shield on your truck, you can actually just kind of push it down and you can get on those nuts. I'm just trying to figure out where to put this camera so you can see this as it unfolds. And you can generally leave the nut like on the last thread, and it'll just make it easier to go back on. $18mm. Let's keep that on just like that for now. The tie rod was 21mm. Now these are aluminum, but that's alright. You can still beat on them a little bit, just don't get too rough with it. Tie rod popped right out of there, so that was good. But this you're going to probably have to smack a little bit. I've got the nut on the last couple threads. Generally all that takes. Let me get, I'm going to get this last little Christmas tree up here. And I'm just going to use a screwdriver for it. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. I'm going to be coming down from the top, getting on these nuts. This one's going to be easier to do from down here. One of these pivot head ratchets. This is the perfect reason you want to have one. You can pivot it. Okay, I guess now we will go after the lower strut bolts. They're 18 mil. Tie rod, lower strut mount, right there in a pile. So now we're ready to pull this strut out of here. So what I'm going to do is take the trusty pry bar, just make sure that you're always got slack in all your lines right here. If you feel any of these starting to get tight, then you need to stop what you're doing. Now they tell you to take the IWE off, disconnect the vacuum lines to it, get my impact. Get your 8mm. And that will just help ensure that you don't damage it. So at this point, this axle will pull out of there and take the IWE completely off. Just gonna let the axle hang there. Set this to the side. You didn't even see any of that, did you? So this is bolted on. You got three. You got a vacuum line. You got three 8mm bolts. Zip out of there real quick. Set this to where it doesn't get dirt and grime in it. Axle's just kind of hanging there, which is good. Make sure you got slack and everything. Okay, everything's looking good. So what I think I'm going to actually do is just pry this strut up, and I'm going to get a nut just started on it so it'll kind of hang by itself. I just put a nut up there. I had to put it on upside down, and the reason is so that strut will hang there while I pry down on this. And you can see how the sway bar is moving. That's what you want. So at this point, I want to pry down on the knuckle, making sure that I don't stretch the ABS line. Okay, that's the easy part. The hard part's getting it back in, because you've got 2 more inches worth of strut you got to deal with. So basically what you've got, here's the hardware, and they just drop in like that. But the trick is making sure they're in the right spots, because this being a 2017, you've got, if you're using this kit, 2014 and up, which would include this model, or you got 2009 to 2013. 2014 and up, skip to the next page. So if you got a 09 to 13, use this page. 14 and up, you're going to use this page for the instructions. And it's very important, right here, A out. You've got an A and you got a B. So A out on the strut. You're going to put the strut like that, and you're going to put the bolts in this configuration right here. So I'm going to put one bolt in here, one bolt here, one bolt here. You kind of got to hold them in. Then you're going to come over here, see how the strut's set up. Oh, it's kind of tough to do this, hold my camera. Hold on, give me just a second. So that's the way that's going to set. You have your 2 factory bolts here, which are now over here. Your single bolt here is now over there. And the way they want, the hardware they want on this, so here's your locking nuts. You got 3 of these for each side, and then a flat washer. And then you've got flat washer, locking washer, and a regular free spinning nut. That's going to go on the top of the strut where the factory nuts were. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten these up. It does say in the instructions not to use an impact. If this is my vehicle, I'd go ahead and use an impact, and if I broke it, then I wouldn't have nobody to blame but myself. But since I'm doing this for a customer, I want to make sure I don't strip out this plastic or whatever. So let me get these tightened up. 30 foot-pounds, and they are locking, torque to 30 foot-pounds. They are locking nuts. So once this is all in, this is now part of the strut, basically. So let me get these locked down. Okay, I've got the spacer in, got the nuts tightened up. Now these studs will be loose. That's normal. Don't worry about that. So the next thing I think I'm going to do now is I'm going to rotate this lower mount. You can kind of see about how angled it is. So you want to go the other way at least that much. I take it past that because it just helps when you stab it in, and I'll try to position the camera to where you can see why that is. So let me get the camera here to where you can kind of see how I'm going to do this. That's where these come in. That's about how much I do, and you'll see why here in just a second. Got my hardware. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw the top of the strut up in here, and I'm going to take one of these nuts just to hold it up there so that I can work with it. Alright, that's all you need right there for now. Now we got to get this in the control arm. Make sure you got plenty of slack. Okay, so I'm just going to take the knuckle right here, see if I can pry down enough to get the bottom of this strut pushed in over there. Paying attention to the slack. I already don't like that, so let me that like that. That might be better. You can see how much you've got to pry down on this. I want to get some more slack here. Okay, let me get my pry bar. That's where the old handy dandy telescoping pry bar comes into play. Okay, I'm going to pivot this just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, the hard part's over. Okay, so now I think I'm going to go ahead and put the OWE back together. This will only go in, well, you'll only go in right one way. You want your vacuum lines up top. Forward, but I'm going to the first notch on the power setting. Now you want to make sure your axle is in the hole. We're going to get the ball joint nut ready. Wiggle and jiggle the axle until it's fully engaged. If you got to turn the hub, pry bar. Here it is. And again, it's very nice to have this indexing head so you can get the exact angle that you need. I'm going to get my other jack and jack the control arm up. Okay. Hard part is hereby done. You want to make sure the axle is fully seated. And it is, in fact, if you look in there, you can see where the shoulder of the axle nut or axle stud starts. Make sure that that's all the way out like that. And don't use an impact on this. If you do, know your impact. And what I mean by that is be skilled with the impact that you're using. If you haven't used it a whole lot and you don't know how much torque it's able to put out, then do this by hand. Okay, I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tighten up the tie rod, then the lower strut bolts. I've still got to put the upper strut nuts on. And the way they want these nuts here. Flat washer, lock washer, nut. $17mm. And again, pivoting head ratchet. £30 foot-pounds. Ball joint's tight. Tie rod's tight. Still got to get the nuts on the bottom of the strut here. And what was that on the bottom? 18. Now it's just a matter of putting all this stuff back. And there you have it. So just to kind of go over and make sure you got everything. Make sure you got your upper strut nuts on and tight with the lock washer and the flat washer. Make sure you got your brackets hooked up for your ABS sensor line and your brake line. Calipers on. Caliper bolts are tight. Upper ball joints tight. Tie rod nuts tight, lower strut nuts are tight. You got your cap on with the nut for the axle shaft. Make sure you got all your little rubber clips in the grommets, that way everything's good there. And that's it. It is a done deal. Not that big of a deal as long as you've got some of the tools to make it not a big deal. Obviously, the pry bar, very big deal. Without a good pry bar, you're going to be struggling. Impact's helpful, but you could do that by hand. It's just going to take a little longer. Good socket set with all the sockets you're going to need. And just take your time and go slow, and you can get her done. I'm going to get this put back together. I've got to look at this oil leak. The guy had Jiffy Lube or some oil change place, changes oil, and it's been leaking ever since. He's taken it back a couple times and they still haven't fixed it, so I've got to look at that and see what they've done. But other than that, I'm going to put this tire back on and I'll show you what the should have showed you the before, but I forgot all about it. But you'll be able to see the after. That's it. You guys take care. There's the before, or there's the after. Looks much better.